Okay, right, welcome to Piggypower. We're on the 206 today. This is Piggy's car. The clutch has been slipping for a little while, especially since the stage 1 map was put on it. It's particularly bad now. So, to not hinder our progress with tuning, we're not actually going to fit a standard clutch kit, we're going to fit a helix clutch kit, which I'll show you down here. So, we've got a helix clutch kit, which is organic, so it's not a paddle kit. Let me just quickly show you, we'll have a look later. So basically it just looks very similar to what you'd normally find, sprung. Got that as a little bargain on eBay. So it's a full clip with the pressure plate as well. So it's a little bit more expensive, but it'll hold more power if you're going to stage 2 in the spring. So you'll need a clutch kit, obviously, to do a clutch with. You'll also need a couple of other things as good practice, are your drive shaft seals. You don't have to replace them, but it's likely they've never been replaced during the life of the car so far to a clutch problem. So for an extra 8 quid or something, 9 quid, it's well worth fitting a pair of those. And then the oil you'll need, I'm going to try and do a bit of a close-up here if you can see that. It's total BV transmission oil. You'll need this, the proper stuff. Again, it's not that expensive, it's about a tenner for the 2 packs. But it has been changed now to called Gear 8. So if you get a bit confused now, that's what it used to be called, BV, now it's called Gear 8. Don't ask me why they've changed it, it's the same oil. And we're going to replace we've heard that the linkages on them are really bad after 100,000 miles. So a set of solid linkages are about 29 quid, and you're either going to have to replace them with solid ones or replace them with standard ones, which are even more expensive and all horrible and rubbery. And then finally, a bit of an odd design on the 206 is that you have to take the drive shafts out to get the bolts out to do your lower arms. So if you've got no history of replacing the lower arms, while you're doing a clutch is probably a good idea. It does add about 50 quid for a pair, but that includes ball joint and the 2 bushes. So this has never had a history of changing them. It's 2001 it was made in, 100,000 miles. It's well worth doing it, especially as basically have the parts off. So I'm going to switch to a time lapse now, and we'll do a little voiceover. Make sure you've got annotations on. I'll put some descriptions on. But the first thing we're going to do is raise the car to a good height so we can get underneath it, but not so high that it's going to be a problem when we drop the gearbox down, that you'll be hanging like an orangutan. Make sure you've got a nice clean work area. There's no really specific tools you'll need. You will need one of these in here somewhere. Hang on. You'll need one of these, which we'll show you how that works later. It locates the clutch centrally and you fit it. Some clutch kits will come with them, some won't. Some you get really nice bolt-on ones. But it's a pretty simple device. You'll need one of those. And you'll need at least 2 jacks. Obviously you need to lift the car, you need to hold the engine, if you haven't got a crane to go across, and then hold the gearbox. A friend is also very useful, but sometimes you don't always have those. So we'll see. So we'll go to some time lapse now and put some description over it so you can see what we're doing through the different stages of replacing a clutch on a 206. The same principles obviously would apply on general vehicles, and up there somewhere I'll put a link to replacing a clutch on a Fiesta as well, a diesel. So the same principles really do apply. So the first thing we'll be doing is raising the car up, getting the wheels off, draining the gearbox, and undoing the hub nuts, take the shafts out. That's what we're going to do today, and then we're going to go and chill until tomorrow.
Right then, slacking off the wheel nuts, getting the car raised nice and safely. I'd suggest axle stands just at the back of the subframe, keeps them out of the way. And then we're going to get the wheels off. And once we've got the wheels off, we're going to undo the hub nuts. We're going to take a little clip off, then get a friend inside to put his foot on the brake, and then we can undo the hub nuts. Then we're going to drain the gear oil. That's what Noah's doing right now, while I take out the bottom ball joint bolts, get a chisel in there, get a lever on the lower arm, and pop it off. I'll show you that in a second in the video. Noah's doing one side, that's my mate there. I only have one, and I pay him. And I'm doing the other side. It is handy to have 2 people, but you can do it on your own. Once we've done that, we are good to take the shaft out and start working on the intermediate bearing, which I will show you now in the next piece of video.
Okay, so we've dropped the bottom ball joints. The simplest way for doing that is obviously take the bolt out, put a chisel in there, a lever across there, bounce it down, push the hub in a little bit to get the last piece out. Now to get the one shaft out, it's really easy. you just pull it out. The other shaft has an intermediate bearing. Now the intermediate bearing has 2 bolts, which hopefully the camera will focus on. There we go. They randomly are 11mm. You don't take them all the way out, you just want to wind them out far enough. On the other side there's an elliptical end, and it holds the bearing in, so you wind out the nut to the end and then spin it 180 degrees and push it through, leave it there. Then you take the shaft out, then when you put it back in, you spin it back around 180 and pull it back in. So that's what we're going to do, and it's a bit time consuming. Ideally get your hand the other side just to hold it still while you're undoing it, otherwise half your turn on your ratchet is just spinning. And in the meantime, Noah will clear all this gumph out of the way. So it's airbox, airflow meter, battery tray, and then we can see the gearbox and start getting linkages off. Smile.
So while I'm working on those 2 long annoying bolts on the intermediate bearing, Noah there is just taking the battery out, 8mm for the terminals, 10mm for the bracket. Then there's the battery box. There's a couple of things clipped to that, a couple of sensors, a couple of wires. You unclip those, then take the box out again with some little bolts in the bottom. Now they're 10mm. And underneath that is another bracket, 13mm, 4 of them. Take that off. And then the airbox is screwdriver for the Jubilee clips. Watch out if there's anything else connected to it. And then pull the airbox out. Make sure you take off the throttle position sensor if it's there. I'll show you that in a second. There's also some earth straps to come off, and the water heater, which is also 13mm, to come off the gearbox. Also reversing sensor.
So she then shows it to Nick, and then turns around and shows it to Finn.
Yeah.
And Finn's like, his parents are like,
yeah.
Okay.
Stop distraying and swaying him aside. Right, so the airbox is out of the way, battery's out of the way. You'll find some models, later 206 models, don't have the throttle position sensor in the engine bay, because that's a stupid place to put it. They have it inside the car, but this one does. So it's a couple of bolts, and then that's kind of out of the way. And then I've removed this, which is the slave cylinder. That's just 2 bolts. It's down on the gearbox down there, and then there's those 3 brass bolts you can see there, which I believe are 8mm Allen keys, Allen heads, like that. Or then just shift the starter just back on itself. We don't need to take it out completely. Undo that. Take the water heater plugs off. We'll get this little mount out the way, and then if the linkages come off quick enough, we'll have the gearbox off in a second. Makes Noah happy when gearboxes come off.
So I'm just taking the starter motor off now, while Noah works on the gear linkages after he's removed the water heater. And I'll mention a little bit in a second, but he basically uses a 13mm stubby spanner for the water heater. It's quite tricky to get to. Don't get yourself stuck in there. Now I'm underneath.
Right, while Noah's up top there using a stubby 13mm spanner, he keeps going on about, to remove the water heater, we're going to start just cracking off and removing a couple of the main bolts. So we're going to leave this one in here, they're 16mm. We've cracked it off, tighten it back up again. We're going to get rid of that one, because it's really awkward to get hold of. And we're going to take off the speed sensor. If your car hasn't got ABS, it'll have a speed sensor located in here. And if it has got ABS, it probably hasn't got one of those. You also have a crank sensor, which we'll need to unplug as well, which sits at the top. Again, Noah's on that at the moment. And then there's another 16mm there, which we can remove that one. We're going to remove that one and that really awkward on the other side. Then there's 2 at the top, one there holding it, and then we'll support the engine, remove the mount and drop it down. So these are the main bell housing to engine block bolts.
Alright, so this is where you join me in taking those few bolts out that we don't need. Obviously you need them, but we don't need them for now. We just leave a couple of bolts left in the gearbox just to hold it on until we need to drop it out. And Noah's just working, and I'm helping him trying to take his gear linkages off. They are a pig sometimes. Sometimes just a 13 or 14mm spanner, open-ended, on the ball, give it a flick and they'll pop off. Other times you can be at it for absolute ages. Remember, you only need to take one end off. Once you've got one end of each of the 3 linkages, you're done.
Okay people, we're at the stage now. Everything's out the way basically. The little crank sensor on the flywheel down there is just in there, so don't forget about that. We've now got 1 bolt at the top holding it and 2 at the bottom. We're going to undo this mount in a second and drop it down. Now hopefully they'll take the gearbox out without taking this horrible pin out, but we'll have to take it out if we need to. Gearbox linkages, you can see this end's still connected, but the other end's disconnected. The simplest way to do that get a 13mm spanner in the other end and flick it off. As easy as that. Now underneath, got blocks of wood on the sump, a jack this side. Now, nice if you've got a little kind of cradle that goes across here, sits on either wing, and bolts onto the engine here, and that would hold the engine up for you. But if you haven't got that, like me, then you can just do that with 2 jacks. So one jack's there, second jack is there, ready to take the gearbox. We'll take this mount off it, and then that'll leave the weight onto the engine mount there, and on the jack. And then all we'll need to do is just lower it down, take those last bolts off, and the gearbox will slide, twist to drop the the diff housing, which sticks out the back there, twist that round and drop the box off.
So now with the gearbox and engine supported, we're taking off that top right engine mount, which is actually the gearbox mount. Alright, Ziggy? And once that's out of the way, we are trying to remove the pin. I'll show you that in a second, but it is possible to remove the gearbox without removing the mount pin. If you wonder what that is, again, I will show that in a second. And then all we need to do is drop that right hand side of the engine right down, take off the remaining couple of 16mm bolts, and the gearbox should slide, twist, drop, twist again, and you're out.
Right, so some will try and get this pin out. That is ideal, but they're thread locked in and the thread's about that long. Absolute pig. And we couldn't get it moving with some grips. So you can just make it. You have to lower the engine right down, and then you pull the gearbox out about that far, and then you just tip this edge, turn it clockwise to get that out, and then anti-clockwise to drop the diff round. Now watch out for that clip, I'd forgotten that. And then that's what you have, and then inside that's what we have there. So there's Torx headed bolts all the way around the clutch. We'll spin them off now, and you'll see what the clutch looks like in a second. And then that's the old release bearing that was, ooh, lovely. You can hear that rattling away, squealing that was. So we've got a nice new one of those to go on as well. Right then, let's get on with it.
If you dab hand with a ratchet, you can get the bolts off without having to jam the flywheel. Otherwise, get a mate with a lever, put one of the 16mm bolts in, and you'll have to hold the flywheel while you undo them.
So in the time it's taken me to get the clutch off, he's still trying to get the same linkage off, which kind of tells you either that he's very bad at doing practical things, or actually they're a real pig to get off. It's more the latter, to be fair to him. Clutch is off. It's not completely worn out, to be honest. It was just getting shinier and shinier, clearly, as it was just slipping more and more with the increased torque. It was the original clutch, as you can clearly see that. So clearly it just couldn't handle it. So there's our original that's coming off. And then over here, our orange boxes. It's going to be our replacements. So that's the friction plate. Quite a compact little unit in there. No grooves on it, but it's an organic material. And then in here, get it open. Is one-handed work. Oh look, I've got a second hand suddenly. There we go. Is this the increased pressure plate? You can see Helix Autosport. So although it don't look huge amount of difference to that, you can see obviously they've basically taken the centre out and put their own plates in, so there's a bit higher pressure to clamp onto the clutch. And then they include a genuine LUK centre bearing. That's part of the kit. So if you're ever wondering with Helix trying to save a bit of money, just buy a genuine LUK. Right, so have we got this off yet? No. Okay, so we'll cut the video. It's about halfway. We're going to finish for today. It is Sunday. Go and have a nice beer, I think. Does it sound good?